The sound of a lawnmower and edger, both buzzing away simultaneously, rudely shattered my Saturday morning sleep-in. A groan from the other side of the bed suggested I wasn't the only one being disturbed. Charlotte sat up, stretching and yawning in one motion. "Sorry, Michael, I totally forgot. The boys wanted to get an early start on the yard work so everything would be ready for this afternoon." With that, she headed to the bathroom, tossing her dirty blonde hair to untangle the knots from sleeping on it. Her figure looked as good as it had 20 years ago. Today was my birthday, which meant it was time for the traditional barbecue with family, friends, and neighbors. It was always a bit extravagant for a birthday party, requiring us to borrow extra grills and smokers to handle everything. Despite it being my special day, I often found myself doing most of the cooking. I wasn't particularly skilled at it, but it got the job done. The best part was always having a cold beer in my left hand as I worked the meat with my right. Equals. Do you want your birthday present now, or will you wait until tonight? Charlotte asked me affectionately. Let's get all the presents tonight, dear. Now I'm going to go downstairs and help the boys. Thomas, 18 and gearing up for Texas A&M in 2 months, and Tyler, a year younger with a scholarship lined up for Auburn, were proving themselves as good sons. I credited Charlotte for raising them right. The only direct contributions I made were a comfortable house and instilling a solid work ethic. Regret lingered for not being a more involved father. We spent a couple of hours sprucing up the yard and patio before firing up the grills. I made sure the ribs went on the smokers first. Hamburgers, hot dogs, and steaks could wait, but ribs needed their own attention. Thomas got the smokers going while Tyler handled the dry rub. At this rate, I could almost sit back and let them handle everything this year. Charlotte arrived just as we wrapped up the prep work. Her 2 sisters were coming over to assist with the extras. We had over 50 people to feed today, and it was amusing how friends tended to show up when there was free food involved. At 40 years old, I still felt as youthful as ever, and next month, Charlotte and I would mark our 20th wedding anniversary. Our marriage had been solid. Though our closeness had mellowed over the years, it remained just as precious. However, things had shifted about a year ago, coinciding with Charlotte starting work. The prospect of an empty nest had nudged her out of the house. As long as she was happy, I was content. While we weren't in need of the extra income, she craved social interaction. After the boys and I finished showering, I put on a new shirt my mother had dropped off earlier in the week. It wasn't really my style, more like something a Hawaiian pimp would wear. Charlotte wisely suggested I wear an apron, and of course, I had a good one that read, "Don't kiss the cook." Soon our guests began to arrive, bringing dishes, presents, and drinks. The weather was perfect, promising a beautiful day ahead. Charlotte appeared stunning, as always, and effortlessly assumed her role as the perfect hostess. Despite approaching 40, she could easily pass for 30, maintaining both her figure and her youthful appearance. I eagerly anticipated some exotic weekends and vacations once the boys were grown and gone. As Charlotte gracefully moved among the tables, ensuring everything was in order, I couldn't help but admire her. She epitomized the ideal wife and mother. What more could a man ask for? Finally, the hungry crowd descended, and plates of food swiftly appeared and disappeared across the yard. Most guests had brought their own lawn furniture, simplifying things. Beer was chilling in one wash tub, sodas in another. I knew the cake was safely waiting in the kitchen, biding its time for its moment in the spotlight. I had no idea where he came from, and I certainly didn't recognize him. He stood tall in a dark blue jacket, lingering at the edge of the party area before leaning in to speak with one of our neighbors. She pointed towards Charlotte, and he thanked her before making his way towards us. Charlotte noticed his approach, looking somewhat uneasy. I remained silent as he passed by me. "Charlotte Harrison?" he inquired. My wife nodded. "Yes." He handed her an envelope pulled from inside his jacket. "Charlotte Harrison, you are served." With that, he turned and left as quietly as he had arrived. By this point, everyone at the party was watching. Charlotte stood there, unmoving, her face betraying no emotion. She glanced at me before slowly retreating back into the house. I watched in silence as the guests, once chattering, now murmured and whispered in hushed tones. In an attempt to break the tension, I called out, "Does anybody want more ribs? Come and get them." Thomas and Tyler came over to my side. "What's going on, Dad?" Tyler asked discreetly. All I could do was shrug. Thomas made a move to go inside, but I stopped him with a shake of my head. "Why don't you guys check if we need more beer or drinks?" As conversation in the yard began to normalize, I felt some relief. After 10 minutes, I decided it was time to talk to my wife, but I didn't get the chance. "Dad, Mom's taking the Mustang," Tyler said, nodding towards the front of the house. My black Mustang convertible sped down the street, faster than usual. The backyard fell silent as everyone watched her drive away. Charlotte typically drove the minivan, but it was blocked in. The Mustang was convenient. There were many unanswered questions, but I figured they would have to wait until my wife returned home. Things took a turn for the worse after that. Charlotte's sister, Amelia, brought out the cake, and I made a half-hearted attempt to appear happy. Without Charlotte, there seemed to be a shadow over everything. Friends and neighbors left first. Family lingered a bit longer, but eventually there was nothing left to tidy up or wash. Surprisingly, Charlotte's sudden departure was not discussed. Everyone made a conscious effort to avoid the topic. I was left alone with my 2 sons, and the house was quiet. They both looked to me for some kind of explanation or sign. I had none to offer. I sat on the sofa alone as they went to bed, and I was still there in the morning. Thomas and Tyler were up early, returning the grills and other items borrowed from neighbors. The scent of fresh coffee drew me off the couch. Charlotte had it returned. Whatever was in that envelope must have been pretty important. I tried calling her cell phone several times, but it was turned off. Of course, I spent half the night awake trying to figure out what was going on. The boys wrapped up tidying everything away and left, easily sensing my need for solitude. A lengthy, steamy shower offered some relief, though it was fleeting. There wasn't much I could occupy myself with on a Sunday. Tomorrow, I'd reach out to see if the police could be of any assistance. I didn't have any direct connections to cops or detectives, but I did have a few acquaintances in the courthouse. Perhaps they could offer some aid. We managed our finances with 1 credit card and 1 debit card. The debit card handled day-to-day expenses, while the credit card was reserved for larger purchases, both always paid off promptly. If Charlotte were in trouble, those cards would be her lifeline. Credit card transactions usually took a couple of days to show up in the bank account, but debit charges appeared within hours. I decided to check the credit card activity first, but found nothing. The debit card, however, told a different story. Approximately 2 hours after Charlotte left, she purchased gas at the Pennsylvania and Ohio state line. 2 hours later, she made another purchase in Illinois, and the last transaction was an ATM withdrawal in Cedar Rapids for $300. It dawned on me, amidst my 3rd cup of coffee, that she wasn't planning to return. This wasn't just a spontaneous getaway, she was fleeing. I loved my wife and didn't want to harm her, but I also couldn't condone her actions. Even though it was Sunday, I managed to cancel both cards within 10 minutes. An hour later, I reported my Mustang stolen to the police department. I omitted the fact that my wife had taken it. Instead, I mentioned a gas card left in the car, which had been used in 3 states heading west. I felt uneasy about deceiving the police, but it seemed the only way to garner any attention. They weren't particularly interested in probing the situation, more eager to dismiss me. I quickly checked the house and noticed only her purse and a small overnight bag were missing. What she packed in it remained a mystery to me. For hours, I debated what to do with her cell phone. Canceling the cards, I hoped it would prompt her to call home and explain. Lunch was forgotten in the midst of my thoughts. By dinner time, my sons arrived with pizzas. Although there was plenty of food from the day before, the hot slices were a welcome treat. We finally discussed what had happened. I briefed them on what I knew, and they offered their support. That night, I slept in my bed, but Charlotte never called. Thomas and Tyler were working for a local tree trimming company over the summer. It was tough work, but they embraced the macho image it brought. I waved to them from the porch as their Jeep disappeared down the street. After finishing my coffee, I wandered back into the empty house, still trying to figure out what went wrong. I called work and took a week's vacation. While I was getting a bit tired of the job, it paid well. I delivered gravel for a local rock quarry. It was hot and dirty, but didn't require much decision-making. I just picked up the loads, dropped them off, and collected my paycheck. After Charlotte joined Prescott Casualty Company, we attended several company events together. They hosted parties and picnics, allowing me to meet some of her colleagues. However, over the last 6 months, we stopped going to these gatherings, and Charlotte never mentioned them. They used to be important to her, but suddenly they weren't. While I'm not great at remembering people I meet, I do recall Noor and Layla Diaz. Noor was a carpenter, and Layla worked in the same office as Charlotte. I felt it was time to call Prescott Casualty. Layla, it's Michael Connor. Do you have a moment to talk? Hi, Michael. I'm quite busy right now. Is it urgent? Charlotte didn't come to work today, did she? No, we weren't expecting her to. Oh, really? Why's that? There was a lengthy silence on the other end. It was clear Layla was uncomfortable talking to me. Michael, I don't think I should discuss this with you. You should talk to your wife. I'd love to, but I have no idea where she is. Another pause. Michael, I'm sorry, but I have a lot of work. I have to go. With that, she hung up. Suddenly, I had a sinking feeling that something was happening at Prescott Casualty that Charlotte didn't want me to know about. It explained why we stopped attending company functions. She feared someone might inadvertently reveal something or lead me to suspect she was up to something. I grabbed a chilled beer and stepped out onto the porch, seeking some solitude for reflection. Over the past few months, there were a few things I'd noticed about Charlotte, but I hadn't dwelled on them much. She started working overtime a few nights each week. It wasn't alarming, but it had become a regular occurrence. Charlotte became tight-lipped about her work at home, and we began avoiding socializing with her colleagues. However, her appearance and attire remained unchanged. She hadn't bought new clothes or lingerie, and there were no suspicious calls or emails that I could recall. I trusted my wife completely, so I didn't give these things much thought. She wasn't acting differently at home, nor was there a lack of romance between us. Still, it was time to make a few calls. Damian Foster, an old high school buddy who worked at the courthouse, was my first call. I wasn't sure about his job, but I knew it involved computers. I explained the situation to him and arranged to meet at the glass door after his work. Before leaving home, I also called Ronwell Home Builders and learned that Noor Diaz was working nearby on an apartment complex. I planned to see him after lunch. Usually, I could finish a Taco Bell burrito, but today I only managed half of it. I was eager to talk to Noor. When I arrived, the crew was still on their lunch break. Noor greeted me with a smile, much friendlier than Layla had been. Michael, good to see you. I suppose you're here to discuss Charlotte. Noor, I spoke with Layla this morning, and she refused to give me any details. You need to tell me straight, no nonsense. I respected Noor because he was a blue-collar guy like me, but I knew I'd get angry if he tried to deceive me. Michael, I usually ignore Layla when she starts gossiping about work, but I do know this much. Charlotte has been involved with a married man in the office for almost 6 months now. They tried to keep it quiet, but it spread quickly. Layla stopped talking to Charlotte when she found out, and so did many others. We missed you at company events, but we assumed Charlotte was keeping you away on purpose. That's the gist of it. I'm sorry I can't offer more. Do you know who the guy is? No, I don't pay attention like I should. I can find out for you. Don't worry about it, Noor. I'll handle it. That summed up the situation for me. There was no misunderstanding. Just a clueless husband who didn't know what was happening in his own home. 10 minutes later, I canceled Charlotte's cell phone service. Now she couldn't call home. As I headed back home, my phone rang. The police in Cedar Rapids had found the Mustang parked in the bus station depot parking lot. It had been towed to an impound lot, and I could retrieve it after paying a $300 fee. I stopped by the police station and got a hard copy of the report. The only conclusion was that Charlotte had abandoned the car and switched to the bus. I couldn't find out where she went, but I assumed it was westerly. I didn't even know she knew anyone in that area. I swung by the bank, closed all our joint accounts, and opened new ones solely in my name. Then I updated the beneficiary on my insurance policies to the boys. By the time Damien showed up at the glass door, I'd had one too many drinks. Michael, there was a divorce hearing today, and Charlotte was summoned to testify. She didn't show naturally. Hannah Smith was divorcing her husband, Steve, citing adultery. Mrs. Smith wanted Charlotte to confirm she was the woman her husband cheated with. So, without Charlotte's testimony, the divorce didn't go through. Nope, went exactly as planned. Mrs. Smith had enough evidence, photos, videos, recorded calls, to make her case without Charlotte. I think she just wanted to humiliate her. Seems like she succeeded. What's Charlotte's situation now? Doesn't seem like anyone cares anymore. There's nothing new she could add, and it's all irrelevant now. Steve basically confessed after seeing the evidence, and the judge granted the divorce on the spot. It'll be final in 6 months. He's getting hit hard with child support and alimony. He has kids. Yeah, 3, all under 10. He's in for a long ride with that. Damien and I chatted for a while, until he excused himself to head home to his family. I expressed my gratitude for his help and requested some coffee from the barkeep. I almost reached for one of the red pickled eggs in the jar on the counter, but then I remembered the leftovers from the party. I indulged a bit more than I should have, but still managed to make it home without causing any accidents. It was a foolish move given the circumstances. While I took a shower, I wrapped 6 ribs in tin foil and put them in the oven. When I returned to the kitchen, all that remained were bones. Thomas and Tyler arrived home and made a beeline for the pork. They teased me a bit and then cooked another batch. Thomas was thrilled about the Mustang situation. After a 20-minute discussion, I relented and allowed both boys to take a bus to Cedar Rapids and drive the car home. I gave them $600 to cover expenses. Tyler drafted a note on the computer, granting them permission to pick up and drive the car home. He seemed competent, so I kept quiet and signed it. The next morning, we all had breakfast at IOPUB, and I dropped them off at the bus station. I chuckled a bit as they boarded, knowing they had no idea what 2 days on a Greyhound would be like. It was a valuable life lesson. I called the Cedar Rapids Police Department to let them know to expect Thomas and Tyler. They assured me there would be no issues. There was one more thing I needed to take care of. It didn't take long for Layla to point out where Steve Smith's office was. As soon as she spotted me, she reached for her phone, but it was too late. I didn't bother with introductions. I just started laying into him, pounding on him about the head and shoulders. He weakly tried to defend himself, but ended up on the floor behind his desk. I delivered a few kicks to his groin before security guards pulled me away. He was knocked out, and I felt a surge of relief. Things escalated quickly after that. Before I knew it, I was at the police station, facing a judge and being escorted to county jail. There was no trial, just a quick judgment. I got 60 days, and I couldn't care less. As soon as I could, I called the guys to fill them in. I could swear I heard Tyler laughing on the other end. The house would be fine sitting empty for a while. Reality wasn't quite like the TV dramas. It wasn't a breeze, but I didn't feel like my life was in danger or that I'd be attacked at any moment. Mostly, it was a bunch of unpleasant characters who couldn't get along and some rowdy kids. The kids and the troublemakers didn't mix much. Private rooms were out of the question. I ended up sharing a cell with a 300-pound guy named Jocko, who beat up his wife when he caught her with his brother. I didn't ask what happened to the brother. Jocko and I got along fine. Naturally, I took the top bunk. The food in the dining hall was too heavy on carbs for my taste, but Jocko was more than happy to take what I didn't want. Besides his propensity for farting more than any other man in the state, he was a good cellmate. 3 days later, Tyler and Thomas came to visit me. The car recovery went smoothly, but they dreaded taking any bus trips soon. They had no news about Steve or their mother. They brought me 2 cartons of cigarettes, even though I don't smoke. Thomas believed they'd be useful for trading, influenced by too many movies. Jocko, however, was thrilled to receive them. He claimed he needed to smoke to keep his weight down. Leaving the boys alone in the house wasn't a concern for me or apparently anyone else. Thomas had already left for school the week before I got out of jail, taking the minivan and leaving the Jeep for Tyler. Tyler and I celebrated my return by going to Red Lobster. He was eager to start his last year of high school, even though he'd have to do it without me. I had other plans. The next morning, Layla couldn't believe her eyes when I walked past her desk. I winked at her and went straight into Steve's office again. 3 hours later, I was back on the bus to the county jail, this time for 6 months. Tyler found it amusing and immediately called his brother at College Station. Jocko welcomed me back with open arms. Phew. I did a better job on Steve this time. I think I actually broke something. Of course, there was no feedback, so I can't be sure. I got fired from my job, which was no surprise. Fortunately, there was enough money stashed away to cover the house payments and living expenses. Tyler handled everything without any issues. All my family members, including Tyler, regularly visited me during my time in jail. Tyler made sure I had cigarettes for Jocko, who often dropped by too. Charlotte's sisters also came to offer their sympathy. Despite all this, no one had heard from Charlotte. We even had a family Thanksgiving and Christmas celebration in jail. With a month left before my release, Jocko left unexpectedly. His wife and brother had moved to Florida, leaving him unsure of his next steps. Tyler offered him a place to stay until he got settled, even offering him a job at the tree trimming company. But Jocko decided to move south for warmer weather, perhaps to Florida. The night before Jocko left, Steve Smith claimed he was attacked by an ape in a downtown alley. I found it amusing, given I had a solid alibi. After my release, I decided I had enough of Kelsey. He had moved away, and I didn't feel like searching for him. Instead, I took a course to learn how to drive big rigs, which wasn't much different from the dump trucks I was used to. I had to bide my time until Tyler started at Auburn, so I spent it fixing up the house. Although I wanted to sell it, it was in both our names, and I didn't want the hassle. No one had heard anything from Charlotte since she left. Tyler brought the Mustang along to Alabama, claiming it was a real crowd pleaser. Didn't do much for me, but then again, I didn't have his youth and charm. I managed to find a couple interested in buying the house, despite its dubious reputation. Not entirely sure what they meant by a cloud over it, but they scored a good deal, and their lawyer assured them they didn't need Charlotte's signature. I didn't argue, I just wanted to be done with it. With the down payment, I bought a rig with a sleeper and hit the road finally free. Never saw the need to file for divorce from Charlotte. Marriage wasn't something I was keen on doing again. Interesting women weren't exactly abundant in jail, and Jocko put me off the whole idea. Seemed Charlotte felt the same way since no surprise paperwork arrived in the mail. Work came easily. I wasn't desperate for cash, so I could afford to be selective about my loads. Nothing frozen, alive, toxic, or explosive, and definitely no trips north of the Mason-Dixon line in winter. It didn't take long to get the hang of things, and I was actually enjoying my new life. Things got interesting during a delivery of farm equipment in South Dakota. It was June, so weather wasn't an issue. After dropping off the load, I headed south and stopped at the Belly Up Diner, about 5 miles off I-90. It might have been a hole in the wall, but the parking lot was packed with big rigs and cars. The draw? Breakfast, served all day, and it was spectacular in both size and flavor. Most customers were locals, but it seemed a few long-haul drivers had made a special detour to eat there. I just told the waitress to bring me the house favorite and a coffee. 3 large TV screens displayed different programs, each unnoticed by the patrons. The closest screen aired mostly political ads, one of which grabbed my attention. Oliver Grant was vying for a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. He possessed charisma and charm, with his new wife, Charlotte, by his side, dressed impeccably like Jackie Kennedy. Charlotte was my ex, and seeing her with Grant stirred mixed emotions. My thoughts were interrupted as a massive plate of hash was placed in front of me. "There you go, big guy. Need anything else?" Betsy, my server, asked. "Tabasco," I replied. Betsy chuckled as she moved the hot sauce from its hidden spot behind the pepper shaker to my plate. "Are you all set now?" "Almost. Who's the woman next to that smooth talker?" She snorted. That's Grant's new arm candy. He needed a wife for his campaign. There were rumors about his sexuality, you know. I doused my hash with Tabasco. She seems a bit mature to be arm candy. Well, I guess when you're in a hurry, you can't be too picky, but she does look good. Older women make better lovers, don't you think? She did look good. Her once blonde hair was now auburn and expertly styled, her makeup flawless, and her tailored suit fitting her like a glove. I glanced away from the television and noticed my waitress had resumed her duties. The hash was delicious, explaining the full parking lot. My coffee was refilled twice before I finished my meal. The pie looked tempting, but I was too full to indulge. Betsy cleared my empty plate and placed the check in front of me. Is he going to win the election? Not if we can help it. He's got big money backing him from important people in Sioux Falls. Locals want nothing to do with him, but we lack the votes and funds to stop him, she replied. I chuckled as I pulled out my money clip. You seem to know something. Are you sure they got married? Yep, they did it on TV like it was a reality show. No honeymoon though. They're waiting until after he's in office, I said, still smiling as I dropped a 10 on the counter. Before you leave, you better tell me something, Betsy said sternly. I'm not looking for trouble, and I'm not poking my nose where it doesn't belong. But I would appreciate a favor, I replied. What's that? Can I catch a couple hours of sleep out front before I hit the interstate? Sure, no problem, but be cautious of those coke addicts. They sneak up here every now and then. They're dirty, nasty people. I nodded my thanks and still had a smile on my face as I exited. Betsy watched from the window as I climbed into the rig. I was just starting to enjoy some well-deserved sleep when the banging began on the door. I ignored it for a moment, but it persisted. Go away. They said I could park here for a couple of hours. The banging continued, so I reluctantly opened the door. Betsy said I needed to talk to you. Can you spare a few minutes? It was dark and rainy, and all I could see was a tough-looking woman in a poncho. I didn't break any laws. Leave me alone. Just give me 10 minutes, she insisted, determined. Sorry, I'm not interested. Go talk to one of the other guys. I'm not a prostitute, damn it. I need to talk to you about Grant. I'll meet you inside in 10 minutes. That seemed to calm her down. She half smiled and closed the door. Maybe I should have just let her in, even though she was soaked. I checked my watch as I grabbed my rain gear. I'd only gotten 3 hours of sleep. The restaurant was still bustling with a decent crowd, and near the entrance there was a section for rain gear, soon to be swapped for snow gear and boots as the seasons changed. Seated in a booth by the front window, she had 2 cups of coffee in front of her. Her hair was straight and shiny black, with a small white streak on one side. Her complexion suggested an outdoorsy lifestyle, well-tanned and rugged, far from delicate. She was no girl. She looked to be at least 35, perhaps pushing 40, with high cheekbones and no makeup. As I sat down, I extended my hand. Michael Harrison. Mia Richardson, do you want anything to eat? No thanks, I just had the hash special about 3 hours ago. I don't think I'll be eating for a while. She replied with a polite smile. Betsy mentioned that you might have some information about Charlotte Grant. I wanted to talk to you before you left. What's so important about Charlotte Grant? My brother, Lucas, is running against him in the election. I see. This is personal then. Not entirely. Lucas represents the people in the area, the farmers, ranchers, and Native Americans. Grant is aligned with the Sioux Falls businessmen. We're not against business, but we don't believe everyone will get a fair shake if Grant wins. Okay, but I still don't see the connection with his wife. Neither do we. All we know is something doesn't seem right. Our election committee attempted a background check on her and came up empty. His campaign isn't releasing any information about her. This might all be nothing, but we're getting desperate. Betsy thought you might know something. I suppose I shouldn't pursue a career in professional poker if a waitress can read me that easily, I chuckled, leaning back in my chair. She grinned, leaning forward. Ah, there it is. You do have something up your sleeve. Are you going to spill the beans, or do I have to drag it out of you? Finishing my coffee, I couldn't help but find her choice of words amusing. "I think I prefer the second option," I said with a grin, motioning to the now empty cup. I surprised myself with that comment. I wasn't usually one for cheekiness or innuendos, but there was something about her demeanor that I found appealing. She exuded confidence and directness, and I got the sense that she always knew what she wanted and how to get it. As Betsy refilled our cups, Mia Richardson fixed her gaze on me. "Apologies, that was rude of me. I'll gladly answer any questions," I said, feeling a pang of regret for my earlier remark. Mia covered her mouth, laughing lightly. "No worries, Mr. Harrison. I'm not that sensitive, and I actually found your answer quite cute. I shouldn't have phrased my question so bluntly." "Good to know the second option is still on the table," I teased. "No, it's not," she replied firmly. "How do you know Charlotte Grant?" "She's my wife. We've been married for over 20 years, never got divorced. Haven't seen her in a while, but unless she snuck in a divorce I don't know about, we're still hitched." Mia seemed taken aback, speechless for a moment. "What was her maiden name when you married her?" After a moment of hesitation, she replied, "Oh my gosh, her maiden name was Harrison. She didn't even try to hide it." Wow. Betsy hurried over, and suddenly all eyes in the place were on us. I felt a bit embarrassed by the attention, but Mia seemed thrilled. Mia sprang up and planted a kiss right on Betsy's lips. Then she made her way to the foyer and pulled out her cell phone. Betsy blushed a bit and leaned towards me. "What on earth did you say to her? I haven't seen her this excited in 5 years." The smart aleck in me, dormant for so long, started to surface. I glanced up at Betsy and replied, "I told her you and I were getting married." She quickly realized it was a joke and rewarded me with a playful punch on the arm. "Are you going to let me in on the secret?" "Nope, I'll let Mia spill the beans. I'm heading back to my truck to see if I can get some work done." "Nice meeting you, Betsy." The rain had stopped, but I didn't make it back to the truck. Mia grabbed my arm halfway there. "You can't bail yet. You need to talk to Lucas. It won't take long, just a few minutes." I'd rather just forget the whole thing. I regret even mentioning it to Betsy. "How long until Lucas gets here?" "He's meeting us at my place. Do you want to ride with me or follow in your truck?" "I'll follow you." I felt better not relying on someone else for transportation. Mia's Jeep wagon was at least a decade old, if not older. After a couple of miles on asphalt, we turned onto a worn gravel road leading to an equally worn double-wide trailer. Someone was home, judging by the well-lit surroundings. There was no grass, just more gravel, and not much of that. I tried to avoid the mud, but it was tricky. There were no other cars, so I assumed Lucas was still on his way. Just inside the trailer door, there was a designated space for wet coats and boots, a practical touch given the abundance of outerwear already present. The layout was intriguing, resembling more of a classroom than a typical living room. Instead of end tables, there were desks. Instead of table lamps, computers. And there, staring at me, were 3 teenage boys. "Hi guys, this is Michael. He's here to help Uncle Lucas," Mia announced as she headed to the kitchen to make coffee. I gave them a small nod in lieu of a hello, feeling a bit awkward. Scanning the room, I found no sign of a Mr. Richardson. With 2 sons of my own, it was easy to tell these boys were close in age, my guess being 16, 17, and 18. There was no TV or music playing. Instead, all 3 seemed engrossed in either a computer or a book. What struck me as odd was that they didn't seem like typical bookish or nerdy types. Rather, they appeared like normal, active teenagers. "Michael, meet my sons. The oldest is Trent, then Tyler, and the youngest is Travis," Mia introduced. They each smiled and nodded in turn. I couldn't help but grin, my amusement evident. "I know it's a bit peculiar that we gave them all names starting with T. No, that's not what's amusing. It's just that I have 2 sons named Thomas and Tyler." "Quite the coincidence," she chuckled. Tyler, the elder of the 2 boys, spoke first. "Where are your sons?" His mother shot him a stern look, but he brushed it off. "Thomas is at Texas A&M, and Tyler is at Auburn." Her simple answer ignited the room. Suddenly, Trent seemed to come alive, as if energized by the revelation. I'm heading to College Station in August. How long has he been there? What's he studying? Mia reached out to touch his shoulder. Slow down, boy, slow down. I'm sure Mr. Harrison has time to answer all your questions. It turned out Trent had a full football scholarship and was already enrolled in ROTC. Tyler had been accepted to the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis and would be leaving in a year. Mia's husband had served in the National Guard and was killed in the Gulf 5 years ago. She didn't delve into further details, and I didn't press for any. Travis, the youngest of the boys, hadn't yet decided his path, but his mother made sure he kept hitting the books regularly. I wasn't sure why Lucas was delayed, but for the next hour, I engaged in conversation with Mia's sons, covering every topic under the sun. Mia stood aside, observing as I connected with them, much like I would with my own boys. Being around Mia's children reminded me of how much I missed mine. Lucas Pierce eventually arrived with 2 associates. After introductions, Mia put her sons back to work while the adults gathered around the kitchen table. There seemed to be some doubt about my claim to be Charlotte's husband, but it wasn't worth arguing about to me. As I rose to depart, I thanked Charlotte for the coffee and bid the boys farewell. Mia wasn't having any of it. "Michael, sit down," Mia commanded, silencing the others at the table. Taking charge of the conversation as if she were running for office, Mia turned to me. "Michael, do you have a marriage license or some proof that you're married to Charlotte Grant?" It took only moments to retrieve a wedding picture from my wallet. Though she was older now with different hair, it was unmistakably Charlotte. I glanced at one of Lucas's associates who had a laptop in front of him. "Go to the Berks County, Pennsylvania Office of Records. You should be able to access marriage licenses from 1960 to 1990. Just search for my name, Michael William Harrison." Mia brought me another cup of coffee with a small smile, seemingly relieved that I hadn't walked away. Flunky number 1 swiveled the laptop screen towards Lucas. August 17th, 1979, correct. Lucas brightened a bit. I nodded, taking a sip of my coffee. Good luck finding any divorce record. As far as I know, and anyone else knows, I'm still married. Feel free to investigate as much as you'd like. It doesn't make a difference to me. The conversation was starting to drag, so I stood up without anyone stopping me. "Mind if I catch some Z's in your driveway before I head out?" Not at all. Mia walked me to the door. I glanced back to bid farewell to Lucas and his pals, but they were deeply engrossed in whatever politicians do. They each gave a small wave or nod as I left. An hour later, I heard Lucas and his crew leave. I thought I was set for the night when I heard knocking on the door again. Mia slipped into the cab wearing a flannel nightgown, gesturing for silence. We were far enough away from the house that the guys couldn't hear, but I think she just didn't want any conversation. We spent at least an hour together in the sleeper. It was passionate and loving, but a bit uncomfortable. Rig berths are great for sleeping, but that's about it. I did my best under the circumstances. She left as quietly as she came, no words exchanged. As the sun rose, the door creaked open once more, signaling Travis was up and calling me in for breakfast. Thankfully, guys and I share the same taste in food, and Mia knew exactly how to satisfy our cravings. I spent another hour shooting the breeze with the guys, feeling quite at ease. So much so, I mustered the courage to ask Mia if I could have a warm shower before hitting the road. An hour later, I was finally on my way, or so I thought. Before I could hit the interstate, a local sheriff pulled me over. It seemed Mr. Pierce had more to discuss with me. I followed the police car back to the belly up where Lucas awaited me mid-breakfast. He invited me to join him, and as Betsy brought me coffee, she gave me a knowing wink. She must have been closer to Mia than I realized. It appeared Lucas's legal team wanted me to stick around. When I tried to brush it off with the old adage, time is money, he simply laughed and continued eating. It would have been easy to agree to everything and then just take off, but after last night, I figured I might want to stick around a few more days. The party would cover a motel room and meals, but that was about it. It was a good chance for me to get my clothes washed and catch up on bills and banking. Thank goodness for Wi-Fi. I fired off a couple of emails to the boys and paid all the bills. I was just folding my second load out of the dryer when Mia walked in. I've never seen a woman rock jeans like she did. Despite having 3 kids, her body was still flawless. Her untucked blue Oxford shirt was cinched with a silver contro belt, giving her a casual yet stylish look. Her skin had a natural glow, not a sheen of sweat, making her undeniably attractive. "What on earth are you doing, Michael?" she asked, catching me off guard. I shrugged innocently, folding laundry. "You were supposed to be gone. Remember, you said you were leaving this morning." "Plans changed. Your brother asked me to stick around a few more days." "The only reason I came to see you last night was because I thought you'd be gone today. I can't have you hanging around here after." She stumbled over her words, clearly flustered. It seemed she wasn't expecting anything beyond a one-night stand and was unsure how to handle the situation. I couldn't help but find her frustration amusing. "After talking to Lucas this morning, I'm seriously considering buying a house and staying here permanently." He made it sound pretty enticing. "I know bull when I smell it. What's really going on?" I motioned for Mia to sit down on the bench beside the dryers. "Your brother insisted I stay a few more days, just until they can sort things out with Grant. I promised to keep my distance from you and the boys until everything's settled. I didn't mean to embarrass you or make you uncomfortable." "That's not the issue, Michael. The boys really like you. They were asking when you could come over again. They were a bit disappointed when I told them you were leaving. Tyler even wanted me to ask you to stay a little longer." "I'm sorry. I was just being friendly. They reminded me of my own kids, and it was easy to talk to them. I didn't mean to cause any trouble for you." "Well, I didn't help matters when I went out to your truck last night." "You certainly made things interesting." My playful comment earned me a playful jab in the arm and a smile. "Why did you come out to see me?" Mia shrugged, looking slightly embarrassed. "I'm not sure. It's been 5 years since my husband passed away. 5 years without any comfort or passion. It just seemed like the perfect opportunity, especially since you were supposed to leave today." She was getting a bit feisty with me again. "So why didn't you leave? Damn it." I handed her a pile of folded laundry and then took the rest before heading back to my motel room. She hesitated at the door for a moment until I put my finger to my lips, mimicking what she had done the night before. Her coy smile turned into a big grin as she closed the door behind her. Making love to a woman in a proper bed is undeniably easier, but what I truly relished was our time in the shower. Not even running out of hot water could dampen our enthusiasm. Before she departed, she insisted I join her for supper at 6. How could I refuse? I was more than ready. Heck, I'd already had 2 showers today. Dinner at Mia's house soon became a regular affair, and Betsy, Mia's longtime friend, became my greatest source of information. Betsy took delight in recounting their escapades from their younger days and the mischief they caused with boys. Conversations about Mia's husband were somber and revealed a deeper side to her, but it only fueled my desire to know her better. Though I never planned to stay in South Dakota, the longer I was there, the more I felt rooted. By the end of the first week, the boys all had Texas A&M t-shirts and Auburn sweatshirts. Mia even kept one of the Auburn shirts for Travis. It was a bit too big for him anyway. I paid little attention to the political maneuvering. Lucas and his team seemed to handle things fine without me. However, when the press caught wind of Charlotte's mysterious past and began to exploit it, Grant's team struggled to downplay it. The more they tried to deny or ignore it, the worse it became. Grant's approval ratings plummeted rapidly. I stayed out of it until one morning I received an unexpected visit at the motel. The woman standing at my door was tall, with blonde hair cascading straight down her back. I was still in my boxers, but I welcomed her in nonetheless. Her eyes darted away as I pulled on my jeans, but I couldn't help but observe her every move. She wore a dark suit paired with a crisp white shirt and low black heels, clearly a professional. I wanted to take a quick bathroom break and grab some coffee, but instead, I forced myself to sit at the standard issue motel table. "I'm Sophia Beth Hayes, an attorney from Levitt's Brothers in Sioux Falls. I assume you're Michael William Harrison," she said. She knew my middle name. This wasn't a good sign. "Excuse me for a moment," I said, rising and heading to the bathroom. Though I closed the door, I was pretty sure the noise of my relief was audible. I had intended to hold it in, but I felt like this woman needed a little dose of humility. Less than a minute later, I returned to the table. "Was that necessary?" she asked. "No, but from your tone, I figured we'd be here for a while," I retorted. "Sorry, I was just trying to maintain professionalism." "You missed. What do you want?" I demanded. "Our company represents Oliver Grant. We recently discovered that your marriage to Charlotte Harrison was never properly dissolved, and we're hoping to rectify that," she explained. "How?" I asked. "There are statutes available within the state to allow for rapid terminations of marriages in certain circumstances. We feel that we can take advantage of these statutes with your cooperation," she explained. "You mean you want me to divorce my wife?" I clarified. "Yes," she affirmed. "Why would I want to do that?" I countered. My guest seemed taken aback. At this point, I would welcome the divorce, but on my terms, and I didn't want to reveal that to her. Miss Hayes just sat and looked at me. "Miss Hayes, can you please tell me in plain terms why my wife and I are no longer living together? Don't sugarcoat it and be completely honest. If you can do that, I will consider continuing our conversation." She leaned back and undid the top button of her blouse. "3 years ago, your wife had an affair with a coworker. When you found out about it, she ran away because she could no longer face you or your sons. She has not been in contact with any of you since that time. Is that plain enough for you?" "That's good. In fact, you hit the nail on the head." "So what's the problem?" I asked. "If you've been following the news, you are aware that Charlotte and Mr. Grant got themselves into a little bind. We can't undo what has been done, but we are hoping to alleviate it a little," she explained. "By getting her a quickie divorce," I deduced. "Right. And tell me again, what do I get out of it?" "Freedom." "Hell, I'm happy with the way things are now. You're going to have to show me how my life will be better, not just the same." "What are your desires, Mr. Harrison? Money? How much are we talking about here? Give me something to work with." "What are the terms of the divorce you're suggesting?" "There aren't any. That's why it can be expedited. No money exchanges hands, no assets are divided, no custody disputes. Both of you leave with what you have, owing nothing to each other. It's clean and final." "How long does this process take?" "Less than 90 days. "So it'll be finalized before the election?" "Yes, that's correct," she admitted, downplaying it. "Do I have to see my wife?" "No, in fact, we prefer if you didn't." "Do I have to stay here until it's over?" My guest sighed. "Yes." "Okay, I'll agree, but on one condition. You cover my room and board until it's completed." Suddenly, Sophia Beth Hayes smiled. I could tell this was better than she expected. I could have pushed for more, but right now, getting it for free sounded good. "I can prepare the documents and have them ready for your signature this afternoon. Would that be acceptable?" "Perfect. I'll need to consult with my lawyer, but I don't foresee any issues." I didn't actually have a lawyer, but I wanted to discuss it with Lucas first. "Your lawyer? Give me your card. I'll call you if there's anything he disagrees with. If you don't hear from me, bring me the papers." Relieved that it was sorted, I realized I needed breakfast. I escorted her to the door, barefoot in jeans and no shirt. As she drove off, I spotted Mia across the parking lot. Before I could signal her over, she sped away. After a quick shave, I got dressed and headed to the belly up. Betsy gave me a disapproving look as she poured my coffee. "Do I get a chance to explain? Not to me, Mr. Harrison, but you better have a good story for Mia." The food was hot, but the atmosphere was frosty. I finished as quickly as I could and called Lucas. He was out of town, but we chatted for 20 minutes. He found the whole situation hilarious and advised me to proceed cautiously, but to ensure I got copies of everything. He seemed confident, regardless of the outcome. I asked him to call Mia. He was still chuckling when he hung up. There was a large power wash station located near Interstate 90 where I spent a couple of hours getting my rig steam cleaned, vacuumed, and then hand waxed. Although it would have been easier to just pay for the service, I found it therapeutic to do it myself. After finishing up, I grabbed lunch at the Cracker Barrel before heading back, hoping to avoid any anger from Betsy. This time, Betsy was parked right by the door to my room. Mia, looking a bit sheepish, got out of the Jeep as I pulled up, clearly having been called by Lucas. She spent the next 2 hours apologizing to me, a sign that guilt can sometimes be a good thing. When Miss Hayes returned with papers for me to sign, she also insisted I accept a check for $10,000. While Grant's campaign continued to struggle, my divorce petition moved swiftly through the legal system. Trent was now at College Station with a friend looking after him. Just before the election, I was officially divorced. Lucas won and vowed to repay me for my assistance, though I didn't feel like I did much. I jokingly told him I'd consider us even if he gave me his sister, earning myself a punch in the arm from Mia. Charlotte didn't fare as well, as she was eventually charged with bigamy after the election. Before anything could happen, she vanished without a trace, something she was skilled at doing. I never got the chance to see or speak to her again. I decided to sell the truck and purchase a house with a small gravel pit near Huron. Mia and I tied the knot at Christmas, with all 5 of my T-boys in attendance. Betsy moved into the double wide and promised to take good care of it. As the sonogram revealed we were expecting a girl, I began looking for good girl names that start with the letter T. The second story. My wife, Aria, was once again in London, indulging in some shopping. Over the years, she's been spending more and more time away from home. Our marriage has dwindled to almost nothing, yet neither of us is eager to pursue a divorce. My flourishing software company, which struggled for over a decade, has now soared in success. Thanks to the convergence of hardware technology with my software package, the company's value has skyrocketed. 3 major companies have shown interest, and I'm just waiting for the right one to make a move. The current value exceeds $10 million, mostly in stock, which I hold. About 8 years ago, Aria worked for a legal firm in Reading, her paycheck helping us significantly. Her long hours and frequent overnight trips, despite being just a paralegal, didn't raise many concerns for me at the time, as I was absorbed in my software development. Until then, everything was fine between us. We enjoyed a wonderful married life, spending quality time together even when my job was uncertain. However, after about a year at the law firm, our intimacy dwindled and our life together became more platonic. I was unhappy with the situation, but I believed it was just a passing phase. We have 2 sons, both in high school. They pretty much took care of themselves. Brian was gearing up for Penn State, and John was looking forward to joining the Marines. Aria's boss at Burke's Legal was Brandon Garcia. I'd met him and his wife a few times at company functions, and he seemed like an alright guy. Then one day, Aria came home very upset and told me that Brandon had been shot by his wife. She didn't elaborate on any details, but shortly afterward, she quit her job and never worked again. Our marriage didn't improve. Aria became increasingly surly and argumentative. I wish I could say she had redeeming qualities, but I can't. I tried to avoid her as much as possible, but it was challenging, especially since she was pregnant. I hoped the new baby would improve our home situation, but it didn't. Aria named our daughter Sophia. She adored the girl and fussed over her constantly, but our relationship continued to deteriorate. As Sophia grew older, Aria started spending more time away from home. The company was profitable, so we moved into a new house with servants. Aria hired a live-in nanny for Sophia and took full advantage of it. I never questioned where she went or why. All I knew was that there were a lot of expenses. Fortunately, I was making money faster than she could spend it, but I was still upset. I attempted to have a conversation with her to understand what went wrong between us, but she refused. The fact that we slept in separate bedrooms certainly didn't help. I was clueless about my mistakes, and thus had no idea how to rectify them. Eventually, I just gave up. Divorce would be costly, likely costing me a couple $1,000,000 and potentially damaging the new company. I was frustrated with myself for letting things deteriorate to this point. Despite having my own legal team, I couldn't see a viable way out. Meanwhile, Sophia was blossoming into a remarkable young lady. I cherished every moment spent with her. Aria often kept us apart, but with her frequent absences, Sophia and I became close without her knowledge. It was our little secret, and Sophia relished it. She was now in third grade and thriving. I attended PTA meetings and teacher conferences, as Aria was usually preoccupied with other matters. Brian and John were both doing well on their own. My marriage was faltering, but my children brought immense joy to my life. Then, one day, luck was on my side. Stella Garcia sat in my office, a surprising sight, given I thought she was serving time for her husband's murder. She seemed to have aged gracefully, her shoulder-length hair a blend of gray, silver, and hints of black. Her makeup was minimal, allowing her natural beauty to shine through, her skin possessing a smoothness that wasn't overly soft. Her natural eyebrows framed her face perfectly, giving her a simultaneously tough and feminine aura. "Stella, this is quite the surprise. You look good," I said, genuinely taken aback. "Thank you, Charles. I wasn't sure if you'd remember me after all this time. 8 years is a long stretch, and I figured I'd be a distant memory by now." "Would you like some coffee?" I offered. "Black would be great," she replied. "Stella, I find myself in a rather awkward situation here. I'm aware of your circumstances, and I certainly don't want to say or do anything to upset you. If I happen to overstep, please don't hesitate to correct me. I've been in jail for the past 8 years, Charles. I've grown quite thick-skinned about the whole ordeal. Don't worry about my feelings. By the way, how's Mrs. Wright?" "I'd rather not delve into that. Let's just say things could be better," I answered, hesitant. "Fair enough. That's actually why I've come to see you. I need to talk to you about Aria. It's not about revenge or spite, but there are some loose ends I feel need tying up." I placed the cup of coffee in front of her and took a seat in the chair next to my desk, rather than behind it. I wanted to hear what she had to say, and I wanted her to feel comfortable doing so. I pressed the intercom button and instructed my secretary not to interrupt us. "Charles, did you follow the trial at all?" "No. Aria mentioned what happened, but I didn't have much interest. I was busy with the business startup, and she wasn't very talkative. I guess she was upset about his death." "More than you'd imagine, I guess. It seems you have no clue about what was going on, so this might come as a shock. You said you didn't want to upset me. Well, I feel the same way. I'm going to explain things to you that aren't pleasant. If it gets too difficult, just let me know, and I'll stop. Maybe we should have had some scotch instead of coffee." We both chuckled slightly. On the day I shot Brandon, he was planning to leave me and run away with Aria. He stopped by the house just long enough to give me divorce papers. Your wife was waiting in the car. They were going to come see you after they finished with me. I had known about their affair for some time and had documentation and a few pictures. The fact that he was asking for a divorce didn't bother me because I was planning the same thing. "Stella, I had no idea. I was living in my own little world at the time. I guess it's my fault in a way that the whole thing happened. I'm sorry that my poor performance as a husband contributed to your marital problems. There's more, Charles. Brandon always dreamed of having a family, but we couldn't have children. He constantly criticized me for it, blaming me entirely. When he handed me the divorce papers, he dropped the bombshell. Aria was pregnant with his child, supposedly giving him the family he craved. As I turned to leave, he continued to hurl insults and degrading names at me. Leaving wasn't enough for him. He needed to make me feel worthless. He just wouldn't stop. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I reached into the buffet drawer and grabbed the revolver. I don't remember pulling the trigger." "Are you saying that Sophia, my daughter, is Brandon's?" "No, Sophia isn't Brandon's daughter, but I'm sure Aria believes she is." "Could you explain that?" "I've had myself checked several times. The doctors never found anything wrong with me. Finally, I tested Brandon's DNA sample, and it turned out to be completely sterile. I never told him. By the way, Sophia is the name of Brandon's mother. I assume that was the name they agreed on when Aria found out she was pregnant." Aria picked out the name, but I had no idea where she had gotten it from. I think you were right, though. She believes that Sophia is Brandon's child. Knowing that explains a lot of things. Would you like some more coffee? No, but I have some more things to discuss. Are you sure you have the time? We're fine. Don't worry about a thing. That's the nice thing about being the boss. When I went to prison, all of the things in the house went into storage. Brandon's briefcase was included. I was going through it last week and found this. Stella handed me the original divorce papers that Aria was going to give to me the day that Brandon got shot. The papers were signed, dated, and notarized. Brandon and Aria worked for a law firm, so the terms of the divorce were very precisely spelled out. Is this still valid? Stella laughed. I have no idea. I'm not a lawyer. Check out paragraph 7. She's granting me full custody of all the children. It'd really get under her skin if she knew I could get Sophia. The boys are out of the picture, but if I got custody of her little angel, she'd lose it. Can I have this so my legal team can review it? It's all yours, Charles. It means nothing to me. I wish you the best with it. Here are a few more items you might find interesting. Stella handed me 2 manila envelopes. The photos my detective took are in the small envelope. They're quite incriminating. I have no use for them, but perhaps they'll be valuable to you. The large envelope contains the investigation results from my PI and some other pertinent documents. You can review them and decide what's important to you. Thanks. I don't really want to see them, but I'll give them to the lawyer along with the papers. We both sat there for a moment, sizing each other up. She was an impressive woman, and I was grateful she came to see me. I should go and let you get back to work. Thanks for meeting with me. I feel better getting these loose ends sorted out. By the way, do you have any job openings for an ex-con? My personal favorite lawyer, Michael Johnson, was like a kid in a candy store when he saw the 8-year-old divorce papers with no expiration date. He couldn't wait to get started. Aria hadn't asked for percentages, just hard figures. She wanted $14,000 from the checking and savings accounts, which was about half of what it was 8 years ago, but almost nothing now. Everything else was similar, except for one thing. She wanted the 1995 Volvo station wagon that she had at the time. I had sold it about 5 years ago. I needed to find that car. Stella Garcia began working in the software testing division of the company. It was an entry-level position, but I thought she would be comfortable with it. Plus, it gave me a chance to see her regularly. I like Stella and hope to get to know her better. Sophia and I kept our DNA tests secret from Aria. It would be a few weeks until the results came back, but Michael needed the time to ensure there were no loopholes in the divorce papers. I was confident the results would show Sophia was mine. With some help from friends at the DMV, I located the Volvo wagon at State College. The frat boy was happy to let me have it for twice what he paid. A week later, I had the new title with Aria's name on it. Michael explained to me that as long as nothing was changed on the original request for divorce, it could go through as written. We didn't find anything serious enough to make us want to change it. Aria's signature was still legal after 8 years, and I signed in my place while Michael's notary put the seal on it. Now all we had to do was wait. Time crawled by. My relationship with my wife remained stagnant, but my bond with my daughter and Stella Garcia blossomed each day. It took about a month, but I finally persuaded Stella to join me for lunch on a day off. It was pleasant, with no expectations attached. I assured her that I wouldn't give any indication to our colleagues that I harbored any romantic interest in her. She responded by saying that her relationship with me mattered more to her than her job. I felt hopeful that things would improve, but I wasn't going to force anything. In the following weeks, I made several attempts to discuss our marriage with Aria. Each time, she shut down any conversation and refused to engage. I hadn't told her that her divorce petition had been processed and would soon be finalized. One ordinary day in the middle of the week, Aria stormed into my office. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, throwing some official-looking papers on my desk. "I'm not entirely sure, but I believe your divorce request from 8 years ago has just been finalized," I replied calmly. "You son of a bitch, you can't do that. Everything has changed since then, and if you think I'm going to let you get away with this crap, you're crazy." What's changed, darling? Just because your lover passed away doesn't mean we can't proceed with the divorce. I've agreed to all your terms, so you have no grounds to protest. I suggest you get a lawyer if you want to contest the divorce. In the meantime, please remove all your belongings from my house, which, mind you, you gave to me. I'll gladly leave your house, and I'll have this lossy divorce notice thrown out. You'll pay, and you'll pay big. Sophia and I will be gone this afternoon, and I'll send someone for my stuff tomorrow. Sorry, dear, but if you read paragraph 7, you'll notice that you gave full custody of Sophia to me. Until you resolve it, she's mine. If you try to take Sophia without my permission, I'll have you arrested, I promise. By this time, Aria was furious. She wasn't just speaking, she was practically screaming. Her neck muscles were tense, and the veins in her forehead were bulging. Her lips quivered with every word. For the next minute, I couldn't even hear what she was saying. I just stood there, stunned by her outburst. Finally, she grabbed the papers and stormed out. The peace and quiet afterward was wonderful. I sat back, fully relaxed and relieved, as my secretary brought me a cup of coffee. She didn't say anything, just smiled. I spent the rest of the afternoon canceling cell phones, credit cards, bank accounts, and insurance policies. I called Stella, and she agreed to have supper with Sophia and me that night. I needed a friendly shoulder to lean on. Sophia and Stella spent most of the night talking to each other. Things didn't turn out as I had planned. A few days later, Michael called me. Aria had hired legal representation, and a meeting was scheduled to resolve the issues with the divorce. A family judge would oversee the proceedings as an arbitrator. Michael mentioned that Aria's lawyer didn't seem confident about invalidating the divorce decree, but was keen on persuading me to give up custody of Sophia as an additional condition. I agreed to compromise, but stood firm on not conceding. The meeting began slowly, mainly focusing on reviewing Aria's demands outlined in the divorce request. Michael handed over checks for the agreed amounts, and we quietly endured the formal protests about the fairness of the settlements. Michael remained silent throughout. Aria seemed taken aback when I passed the car keys and title for the Volvo across the table. Finally, the topic of custody arose. Aria asked the judge for permission to make a statement, which was granted. For the past 8 years, I've endured a loveless marriage for the sake of my daughter. I loved Brandon Garcia wholeheartedly and was proud to give him the child his wife couldn't. Sophia is Brandon Garcia's daughter, not Charles Wright's. Mr. Wright has no rights to Sophia, and I won't accept my daughter being raised by a stranger. I'm seeking sole custody of Sophia Wright based on this. The judge, who had been silent throughout the entire proceeding, finally spoke up. Mrs. Wright, are you alleging that Sophia Wright is the product of an extramarital affair between you and Brandon Garcia, while you were married to Charles Wright? Yes, Your Honor. It sounds somewhat demeaning the way you phrase it, but Brandon Garcia and I were lovers and soulmates. We never saw our relationship as something as sordid as adultery. We were planning or starting our own life together when his tragedy occurred. Sophia is the living proof of our love, and I don't want Mr. Wright having any contact with her. Normally, your admission in this matter would diminish your chances of custody due to the infidelity. However, if what you say is true, we may need to reconsider, the judge remarked, turning towards Michael. Do you have anything to add? Michael and I exchanged glances. Are you sure about this, Charles? Yes, let's do it. My affable lawyer slid a document across the table to Aria's lawyer. This is a report dated approximately 6 weeks prior to the conception of Sophia Wright. As you can see, the report indicates that Brandon Garcia had a sperm count of 0. Mr. Garcia was completely sterile, and there's no way he could have fathered a child. That's why Stella Garcia, who is fertile, was never able to conceive. Aria's complexion drained, her eyes widening in disbelief. It was reminiscent of her previous agitation in my office. That's not true. This report is fabricated. You're just trying to take Brandon's child from me, she exclaimed, her voice trembling with emotion. Her lawyer leaned in, murmuring soothing words, attempting to calm her down. Eventually, she seemed to ease a bit. Michael slid 3 more documents across the table. The first is a DNA analysis of Sophia Wright. The second is of Charles Wright. and the third is a comparison, proving Charles Wright is indeed Sophia Wright's father. Any questions? By now, Aria was in tears, her anger replaced by sheer despair. She sobbed uncontrollably as her lawyer requested a brief recess. After the break, Aria's lawyer conceded custody but sought a visitation agreement. I agreed to Aria having Sophia every other weekend and 2 holidays per year of her choice. Aria opted for Christmas and her birthday. She remained quiet for the rest of the session. I returned to work without a word, leaving Michael to finalize the paperwork. I couldn't believe my luck in getting away so easily. If Aria had been a better partner these past few years, I would have gladly shared my wealth with her. I never held back emotionally or materially. I was ready to do anything for her, yet somehow I fell short of her expectations. I couldn't figure out what Brandon Garcia had that I didn't, or what he did for her that I couldn't. The pictures Stella left behind didn't reveal anything special about him physically. I gave copies of the pictures and the investigation to Aria, including 2 reports of Brandon's motel meetings with other women while he was still seeing her. I hope she found some satisfaction in reading those. Every attempt I made to get an explanation from Aria was met with resistance. The divorce left me feeling like a failure, but I found some solace with Sophia and Stella. Aria moved in with Brandon's mother, Sophia. Apparently, they had become friends over the years. Unfortunately, the arrangement didn't work out well for Aria. To support herself, she started selling off the jewelry and designer clothes I had bought her. It took her a while to realize that her lover's mother was doing the same thing. After 6 months, Aria moved out and went to live with her sister in Norristown. Initially, Aria used to pick up Sophia every weekend, but gradually she started making excuses for not being able to come. The excuses became more frequent and less convincing until she eventually stopped coming altogether. Sophia didn't mind Aria canceling because Stella and I made sure to compensate for her absence. We spent more time together and began to feel like a family. Eventually, Stella moved in, and we got married just before Christmas. During the holidays, Aria was on a singles cruise in the Caribbean and couldn't pick up Sophia as scheduled. Surprisingly, everyone was relieved. 2 weeks later, I filed to have the custody addendum thrown out, and it was approved. Finally, my company was bought, and we were now financially stable. Stella was overjoyed because she was pregnant for the first time in her life. Though we might be on Social Security by the time the baby finishes high school, it will all be worth it. Life is finally good. The third story. As I delved into the pile of old photos, intending to send them to a local lab for digitization, inspiration struck. I stumbled upon the perfect gift idea for my wife, our 3 children, and our extended family as we approached our 25th wedding anniversary. Our collection spanned from childhood, capturing moments from when we first crossed paths in grade school, followed by our high school romance, college adventures, and into our married life. Despite the assumption that childhood photos would still reside with our respective parents, Joyce had requested them when our children were young, consolidating our memories into these packed photo boxes I was currently immersed in. My brain raced with excitement as I pondered the possibilities. Digitizing these photos would not only preserve our precious memories, but also provide a vast array of images for a continuous slideshow during our anniversary celebration. With all 3 kids living locally, they could assist in selecting the photos, making it a delightful surprise for Joyce. Although I had postponed the daunting task of digitizing our photos for far too long, realizing it was a responsibility I needed to shoulder alone, Joyce had been occupied with the myriad duties of parenthood, homemaking, and managing her business's finances. Allow me to introduce myself before I delve too deeply into my musings. I'm Nick Torres, a 47-year-old who shares the same age as my beloved wife, Joyce. As mentioned earlier, we've been inseparable since childhood, navigating school together and transitioning into adulthood and married life side by side. We're that couple, the envy of many, a pair who exudes long-term love, sweetness, and affection, often seen together at gatherings, rarely seen apart, and always present at our children's events. Yes, we're that couple, the ones you find in every social circle. Now, Joyce may not fit the stereotype of a drop-dead gorgeous woman, but she's beautiful in her own right. Though she's maintained her slender frame, the journey of motherhood has left its mark, adding a few extra pounds. Our walks together, a habit she lovingly courses me into, help stave off any weight gain on my part. Joyce's deep brown hair cascades in collar-length curls that frame her face perfectly. While her features may be considered plain by some, her complexion remains clear and smooth, with only a hint of wrinkles around her eyes, a testament to her timeless beauty. Despite her dismay at the occasional sighting of a gray hair, she adamantly refuses to cover them up with dye. As for her physical attributes, well, I'm not in the habit of scrutinizing the size of her undergarments, but I can attest to the fact that her breasts are a comfortable handful. She claims they've started to sag a bit, a consequence of motherhood and gravity's persistent pull. Her waist has naturally thickened over the years from bearing and nurturing our 3 children, and her hips have widened from the demands of childbirth. Yet each curve tells a story of love, growth, and the joys of family life. Joyce's hips have also widened slightly over time, a fact that occasionally weighs on her mind. Like many husbands, I often find myself in the familiar scenario of fielding questions about whether her choice of attire accentuates her rear. It's a delicate dance, trying to offer reassurance without causing any offense. My solution? I drop to my knees behind her, planting kisses on that beloved rear of hers, whether she's clad in dress slacks or nothing at all. Sometimes I'm treated to the delightful absence of underwear, allowing me to revel in the opportunity to lavish attention on what I consider to be a magnificent asset. Knowing she's adored tends to dispel any wardrobe-related worries she might have. Standing at a perfect 5.5 feet, Joyce is just the right height for me, given my own stature of 5'10". When she slips into her 3-inch heels for our formal date nights, we become the epitome of proportion. With her head resting just below mine, we move comfortably together on the dance floor, a rhythm honed over years of shared experiences. Reflecting on our college days, memories flowed back of me immersed in computer design and systems analysis classes while Joyce pursued her accounting degree. Despite our exclusivity, we adhered to a conservative lifestyle, dictated partly by parental expectations and partly by financial considerations. Cohabitation was off limits if we wanted to maintain harmony with our families and secure their support for our college expenses. I resided in the dormitory during my freshman year per college regulations, then shared an apartment with 2 roommates for the remainder of my college tenure. Meanwhile, Joyce opted for dorm life, leveraging her role as a resident assistant to have her housing costs covered by the college. In our junior and senior years of college, Joyce approached me with a request to explore social outings with a mix of friends, both male and female. Despite our long-standing exclusivity since middle school, I reluctantly agreed, understanding her desire for broader socialization. While I harbored concerns about potential temptations in such settings, I chose not to voice them, trusting in the strength of our relationship and hoping she would simply enjoy herself. During these brief sabbaticals, Joyce would distance herself slightly, but our connection remained intact upon her return, and we seamlessly resumed our routine. Did I entertain thoughts of dating others in her absence? Surprisingly, no. Instead, I doubled down on my studies, driven by personal goals, including achieving a high GPA. Returning to the present, my mind wandered through a myriad of emotions, joyful, contemplative, and even somber, as I reflected on our journey together. I envisioned defying the odds, celebrating not only our upcoming silver anniversary, but also future milestones, perhaps even reaching our golden and diamond anniversaries, by the grace of God. I imagined us growing old together, perhaps in a care facility, yet still lucid enough to appreciate the significance of our enduring bond. However, amidst these musings, a startling discovery halted my reverie, a small photo box tucked away behind the others. Opening it revealed a collection of Polaroids, a puzzling revelation considering we had never owned a Polaroid instant camera. The cost of each snapshot had been prohibitive during our early years together, when finances were tight and digital photography had yet to revolutionize the process. As I sifted through the square shots, my heart sank, puzzled by the origin of these mysterious photographs. After some time, I set the photos aside and attempted to sift through the remaining stack. Eventually, I packed them all away and turned to our cloud storage account. In the era of smartphones, the majority of our photo collection now resided in the digital realm, stored on a shared cloud account. Despite having access to these images on our phones, I suspected Joyce had never delved into the cloud account to explore them further. Among the digital trove were photos received via text message, some of which stirred up poignant emotions within me. Fast forward 6 months. With just 3 weeks remaining until our silver anniversary celebration, all the arrangements had been finalized. The continuous slideshow, set to progress every 15 seconds, was complete, accompanied by soft piano music, a nod to Joyce's fondness for the instrument despite her lack of playing skills. Initially, I had intended to surprise Joyce with the finished presentation during a celebration, keeping it hidden even from the kids. However, realizing the length of the slideshow and the distractions of a gathering with over 100 family and friends, I decided Joyce should preview it beforehand. Amidst her busy schedule with the accounting firm, I managed to secure a slot in Joyce's calendar. Finally, the evening arrived, and she pledged to watch the slideshow in its entirety, uninterrupted. She even went so far as to power off her phone, fully committing to the experience. Our expansive plasma TV served as the canvas for our memories, each one rendered in stunning 4K clarity. I rearranged our furniture, positioning our individual chairs aside and bringing the love seat to the forefront, ensuring we sat close together as our lives unfolded on the screen. It had been a while since we'd been this physically close, and while it felt comforting to me, I couldn't gauge Joyce's reaction. Initially, she maintained a distance, refraining from any physical contact, but that changed as the slideshow progressed. The title slide read, "Remember When." We embarked on our journey down memory lane with "Remember When We Were Kids Together." Each slide depicted either Joyce or me individually, then us together during our grade school years. Growing up as next-door neighbors, we shared countless memories from our earliest days. One particular image captured Joyce planting a kiss on my cheek while I pulled a comically disgusted face, a relic from the age when girls supposedly had cooties, and I wanted nothing to do with them. Joyce's smile widened as she giggled at the snapshots of our youthful adventures. "Oh, Nick, I'd forgotten some of these photos even existed. This is going to be a treat." A few more slides chronicling our slightly older selves in middle school marked the end of that section. And thus, we transitioned to "Remember When We Were in Middle School Together." The slideshow continued to unveil snapshots of our adolescence, capturing pivotal moments like our first boy/girl dance at school, where Joyce donned a lovely dress, and I clumsily sported my first tie. Memories of our confirmation ceremony at the local church were immortalized with group photos, showcasing our class of about 10. Sports played a significant role in our high school years, with images from soccer, football, and volleyball games illustrating our journey, despite neither of us being regular starters. A particularly endearing picture depicted our first official date, chauffeured to the movies by my dad and escorted home by hers. In the second photo, Joyce planted a kiss on my cheek once again, but this time, my grin spoke volumes. Girls definitely didn't have cooties anymore. As the presentation unfolded, Joyce surprised me by reaching for my hand, a gesture we hadn't shared in over a year. Despite my internal struggle, I allowed her touch, feeling a rush of emotions as she smiled at me before returning her focus to the screen. Next came the anticipated segment, "Remember When We Were in High School." The collection expanded, chronicling our journey from nervous freshmen to confident seniors. Solo portraits, couple shots, and group pictures documented our milestones, from pizza parties at youth fellowship to birthday celebrations, bowling nights, and my first car. Dances, dates, junior prom, homecoming, and finally, senior prom, all captured in vivid detail. Unbeknownst to my parents, one photo captured me grinning mischievously, hinting at a secret I held close. The slideshow seamlessly transitioned into the next segment, appropriately titled "Remember When We Went to College." It commenced with snapshots taken by our parents, capturing us eagerly waiting in line to register for classes, followed by glimpses of our first dorm rooms and roommates. I had reached out to many of our former college friends, gathering a plethora of images documenting our adventures throughout those formative years. Among them were pictures of Joyce with her friends during times when we weren't dating, a revelation that caught her off guard. Some shots, depicting her cozying up to other guys, caused her to lower her head in embarrassment. Though I kept my focus on the screen, I couldn't help but observe her reaction from the corner of my eye. The college of memories from each year culminated in our graduation, capturing us beaming in our caps and gowns, surrounded by loved ones. The sight of those joyous moments brought a nostalgic smile to Joyce's face once again. As the slideshow reached its culmination with a picture of our graduation celebration, Joyce turned to me, her voice tinged with curiosity. "Where are the pictures of our engagement you proposed to me during finals week?" I wordlessly gestured toward the screen in response. Her attention returned to the display as the chapter transitioned to "Remember when we became betrothed." A friend had captured the moment I knelt before Joyce, asking her to marry me during a study break in our final week of school. The subsequent image depicted Joyce jubilantly knocking me over, clearly accepting my proposal. Though I maintained my gaze ahead, I couldn't help but notice Joyce wiping away a tear, moved by the tender recollection. Her grip on my hand tightened, and she turned to me with a heartfelt declaration. "I love you, Nick. This is wonderful. Thank you." I simply nodded, returning my focus to the unfolding memories on the screen. The slideshow continued with snapshots from our year of engagement. Though we shared countless experiences during that time, we had made a solemn vow to wait until our wedding night to consummate our physical love. Joyce remained steadfast in her commitment, honoring the pledge she had made during our high school years in the youth group at our church. Notably absent from the presentation was any documentation of my bachelor party. A single slide humorously noted, "Nick's bachelor party was a bit tame. No strippers, no wild drinking, and wrapped up by midnight." In those days before camera-equipped smartphones, neither my friends nor family were keen on capturing the event, resulting in a lack of potentially embarrassing photos from that uneventful night. However, I had equipped a few of Joyce's friends with disposable cameras for her bachelorette party. Whether they disclosed the source of the cameras to Joyce remained a mystery. At the time, I hadn't developed the photos, intending to save them for an anniversary celebration. Rediscovering them alongside the Polaroids prompted me to finally develop the film. Among the images were shots of Joyce donning a playful fake veil, a far cry from the one she would wear for me just a week later. I was aware of the presence of male strippers at Joyce's bachelorette party, as she had eagerly recounted their antics to me the following day. Among the developed photos were snapshots of her receiving lap dances from a couple of them, her expression betraying a level of desire I had rarely witnessed throughout our long relationship. When she turned to me with concern, questioning whether our families should see these particular images, I responded directly. "Why? Are you ashamed of how much you enjoyed their attention? I think even the kids found it amusing when we reviewed these photos for the slideshow. The kids have seen these." Joyce's embarrassment was palpable as she realized the extent of her exposure. "Oh my God, I am so embarrassed." Her cheeks flushed as she momentarily buried her face in her hands, only to look up and discover a shot of herself on her knees with a drink in hand. "Oh no, not a picture of me falling down drunk. Please, can't you remove this one?" I shook my head regretfully. The soundtrack was added after selecting the slides. Changing it now would be too time-consuming. The slideshow continued, transitioning to the next chapter of our life together. "Remember when we pledged our troth?" flashed onto the screen. A plethora of images depicted us together, some of Joyce alone and others with her bridal party. I had discreetly included a few shots of the groomsmen, though I kept my ulterior motive to myself. Among the snapshots were traditional moments like the cake-cutting ceremony, where Joyce playfully smeared cake on my face, a gesture I accepted with good humor, allowing the frosting to linger for a while. Other pictures captured me conversing with family members, my brow still adorned with traces of white frosting. At our wedding reception, we had placed disposable cameras on the tables, collecting them afterward to develop the photos once we returned from our honeymoon. While reviewing them briefly upon our return, I hadn't paid much attention. However, revisiting them for our anniversary celebration, I noticed something that had previously escaped my notice. Among the images were a couple of shots of Joyce dancing intimately with my best man and one of my groomsmen. Their closeness seemed to surpass mere dancing, and Joyce audibly gasped upon seeing them included in the slideshow. Keeping my focus on the screen, I remained silent as the presentation moved to the next slide. Though I felt Joyce's gaze on my profile, her expression filled with consternation. That section concluded with a glimpse into our honeymoon, capturing our youthful love on the beach. I recalled asking strangers to snap pictures of us as we stood arm in arm in the surf, even including one of Joyce topless, albeit from the rear, wearing only her micro bikini bottoms. Joyce's discomfort at my choice of photos resurfaced, though she said nothing. The slideshow progressed to a chapter on her pregnancies, with numerous pictures documenting each of her 3 pregnancies, followed by snapshots of our children growing up, interspersed with festive Christmas celebrations and family vacations until reaching the conclusion. The final slides simply read, "Remember when." I paused the slideshow. This marks the end of the celebration slideshow. The following slides are for you and me alone. I don't believe anyone else needs to see them, but I'll leave the decision to include them up to you. Joyce wore a puzzled expression as she looked at the screen. Ignoring her, I pointed back at it and hit play again. The next title slide read, "Remember when." On our wedding night, you told me that I was your first, and I told you that you were my only. The first image following the title slide was one of the Polaroids, a revealing shot of Joyce in the nude, accompanied by another man. Her immediate reaction was to reach for the remote, her voice trembling with anger. "Where did you get this? Why are you trying to publicly embarrass me?" I maintained a firm grip on the remote, deliberately keeping it out of her reach, and kept my eyes fixed on the screen. These must be your little mementos, reminders of when you betrayed our trust. While I honored our agreement to wait until marriage, you were busy breaking it. The subsequent slide confirmed my accusations, capturing my wife in the act of infidelity. As her agitation grew, she demanded, "Shut it off. Now, shut it off. I demand you shut it off now." She attempted to wrestle the remote from my grasp, but I held firm. The next image displayed her on her knees, adorned with the fake veil from her bachelorette party, engaging in explicit activities with a stripper. I couldn't resist the urge to comment, "Remember when you asked me not to show you falling down drunk at your bachelorette party? Turns out you weren't drunk. You were preparing to cheat on me with a stripper." The subsequent slide depicted the scene in even more vivid detail. Oh, and with other strippers too. Subsequent slides revealed Joyce being subjected to various acts by the strippers and her friends, all while they cheered her on in the background. Imagine my surprise when I had those pictures developed for our silver anniversary celebration. I only wish I had seen them sooner. It certainly sheds light on why some of your closest friends distanced themselves from you. They remained loyal, keeping your secrets, but evidently they didn't condone your actions, hence the silent abandonment. Tears welled in her eyes, and she made a motion to leave. "No, you don't," I interjected firmly. "You promised to sit through this entire presentation. You don't get to walk away. You don't get to turn away. You do everything in your power to halt the slideshow, and if you do, it will be automatically sent to everyone in your contact list. It's ready to go, loaded and waiting. So you sit there and try to explain why you've been unfaithful to me throughout our entire relationship." She attempted to protest through her tears, but I simply pointed at the screen. I anticipated she might claim that these transgressions occurred before our wedding, suggesting they didn't count since she hadn't made her vows yet. However, the next slides swiftly dispelled that notion. At our wedding reception, friends caught her with my best man, Gareth Bennett, and they danced together in a not-so-friendly embrace. Judging by some of the pictures on her phone, that wasn't their only contact. In the pictures, I saw them engaging in debauchery years after she and I were married. Then came pictures of Eric Klump, one of my fiancés, who was doing essentially the same thing. A month ago, she had selfies and emailed pictures of other encounters with Eric. That section concluded with a glimpse into our honeymoon, capturing our youthful love on the beach. I recalled asking strangers to snap pictures of us as we stood arm in arm in the surf, even including one of Joyce topless, albeit from the rear, wearing only her micro bikini bottoms. Joyce's discomfort at my choice of photos resurfaced, though she said nothing. The slideshow progressed to a chapter on her pregnancies, with numerous pictures documenting each of her 3 pregnancies, followed by snapshots of our children growing up, interspersed with festive Christmas celebrations and family vacations until reaching the conclusion. The final slides simply read, "Remember when." I paused the slideshow. This marks the end of the celebration slideshow. The following slides are for you and me alone. I don't believe anyone else needs to see them, but I'll leave the decision to include them up to you. Joyce wore a puzzled expression as she looked at the screen. Ignoring her, I pointed back at it and hit play again. The next title slide read, "Remember when." On our wedding night, you told me that I was your first, and I told you that you were my only. The first image following the title slide was one of the Polaroids, a revealing shot of Joyce in the nude, accompanied by another man. Her immediate reaction was to reach for the remote, her voice trembling with anger. "Where did you get this? Why are you trying to publicly embarrass me?" I maintained a firm grip on the remote, deliberately keeping it out of her reach, and kept my eyes fixed on the screen. These must be your little mementos, reminders of when you betrayed our trust. While I honored our agreement to wait until marriage, you were busy breaking it. The subsequent slide confirmed my accusations, capturing my wife in the act of infidelity. As her agitation grew, she demanded, "Shut it off. Now, shut it off. I demand you shut it off now." She attempted to wrestle the remote from my grasp, but I held firm. The next image displayed her on her knees, adorned with the fake veil from her bachelorette party, engaging in explicit activities with a stripper. I couldn't resist the urge to comment, "Remember when you asked me not to show you falling down drunk at your bachelorette party? Turns out you weren't drunk. You were preparing to cheat on me with a stripper." The subsequent slide depicted the scene in even more vivid detail. Oh, and with other strippers too. Subsequent slides revealed Joyce being subjected to various acts by the strippers and her friends, all while they cheered her on in the background. Imagine my surprise when I had those pictures developed for our silver anniversary celebration. I only wish I had seen them sooner. It certainly sheds light on why some of your closest friends distanced themselves from you. They remained loyal, keeping your secrets, but evidently they didn't condone your actions, hence the silent abandonment. Tears welled in her eyes, and she made a motion to leave. "No, you don't," I interjected firmly. "You promised to sit through this entire presentation. You don't get to walk away. You don't get to turn away. You do everything in your power to halt the slideshow, and if you do, it will be automatically sent to everyone in your contact list. It's ready to go, loaded and waiting. So you sit there and try to explain why you've been unfaithful to me throughout our entire relationship." She attempted to protest through her tears, but I simply pointed at the screen. I anticipated she might claim that these transgressions occurred before our wedding, suggesting they didn't count since she hadn't made her vows yet. However, the next slides swiftly dispelled that notion. At our wedding reception, friends caught her with my best man, Gareth Bennett, and they danced together in a not-so-friendly embrace. Judging by some of the pictures on her phone, that wasn't their only contact. In the pictures, I saw them engaging in debauchery years after she and I were married. Then came pictures of Eric Klump, one of my fiancés, who was doing essentially the same thing. A month ago, she had selfies and emailed pictures of other encounters with Eric. She sat there, defeated, as the other images I had stored in the cloud continued to scroll by. Some depicted her with coworkers, while a few showed her interacting with her bosses over the years. Finally, the last chapter emerged. "Remember when we were married?" I paused the display, allowing her a moment to collect herself. It seemed that confronting her infidelities had thrown her off balance, a fact that struck me as ironic, considering she had been adept at deceiving me all this time. I couldn't help but probe. "Is this why you've always discouraged me from engaging with your coworkers or attending any work functions? Were you afraid someone would spill the beans?" She simply shrugged in response. I waited, and eventually she spoke up about the slide. "Didn't we already cover when we got married?" Pressing enter to advance to the final slide, I revealed a clip art drawing depicting a piece of paper with the words "dissolution of marriage" at the top. The question wasn't about when we got married, but whether you remembered what being married meant. Handing her a standard manila envelope, I explained, "If you prefer, a process server will deliver a formal copy to you at work tomorrow. If this suffices, there won't be any drama at your workplace. You can inform your paramours that from now on, you're free to do as you please, whenever and wherever." Unsurprisingly, her response was predictable. "I don't want a divorce." My response had been carefully crafted over 6 months of contemplation. "Of course not. You want me to be the one who foots the bill for this house, maintains the yard, cleans the pool, and does the grocery shopping, all while you're too preoccupied with your own affairs to bother with such mundane tasks. Not to mention, you feel no obligation to fulfill the basic duties of a spouse, denying me even a glimpse of your body or any semblance of physical affection for months now. It's no wonder you're opposed to divorce. It's unfortunate, but inevitable." She shook her head in denial, prompting a response I had tried to suppress. "I have to wonder, are the children even mine? Scratch that. I neither want nor need to know. I've been there for every sniffle, sneeze, and good or bad day, so I am their father. However, I did inform them of what I intended to reveal to you tonight, but I did not involve them in witnessing the evidence of your betrayal. That remains between you and me." Handing her the remote, I continued, "Do as you wish with the presentation. There's only one other copy, safely in the possession of my attorney, in case you choose to contest the divorce. Couples counseling is out of the question. The division of assets will be as equitable as possible, unless you've been hiding bank accounts. If you have, I couldn't care less." Clearly struggling to keep up, she stammered, "Have you turned the kids against me?" It was evident she was lagging far behind in the conversation. I had hoped to wrap up this ordeal swiftly, but it seemed the assertive businesswoman was absent tonight. "No, if they pick sides, that's on you. I simply informed them about our divorce and the fact that you haven't been faithful throughout our relationship, which I've only recently discovered. I've actually canceled all plans for our silver anniversary celebration. Honestly, I never even arranged any of the events we discussed. I just said I did. I've explained everything to my parents, and they're discreetly informing our family on my side. As for your relatives, you can tell them whatever you like. I have no intention of interacting with them anymore. I love you and don't want a divorce," she pleaded once more. "God, you sound like a broken record," I retorted. "Sure, you love me, yet you not only cheated on me at every opportunity, but you also kept evidence of it. That doesn't sound like love to me. Did you keep any other souvenirs from your affairs?" She shook her head vehemently. "No, just the pictures. I never intended for you to see even the innocent ones from my bachelorette party. Honestly, I had forgotten most of them even existed, let alone that they were somewhere you might find them." Attempting another approach, she begged, "Please forgive me. I'll be the wife you want. No more affairs. I'll cut back at work and be there for you whenever you need me. I can't believe it's been so long since we made love. I've always been happy and satisfied with you in bed." "Yeah, and that's why you've avoided touching me for so long, right? To make our lovemaking even more special." "Sorry, but that's not going to cut it." As she moved as if to stand, tears smudging her carefully applied makeup meant for everyone but me, I stepped back out of her reach and raised my hands to ward her off. Looking around the room, I realized it was time to depart, ensuring I hadn't overlooked anything important. Mentally shrugging, I concluded that anything left behind was merely an object devoid of sentimental significance and easily replaceable. It was time to make my exit. Considering how rarely you're here, except to use this place as a temporary crash pad, you might not have noticed anything missing. However, you should know that everything I wanted to keep has already been moved to my new place. I hesitate to call it a home since my heart feels dead, but it's somewhere to hang my hat. Feel free to keep whatever belongings you wish. Enclosed in the packet is a power of attorney for the house. Keep it, sell it, burn it down, whatever suits you. Perhaps the kids will want to visit. Since Jacob and Jerome are still in college, they might appreciate a familiar space during holidays and semester breaks. I didn't inquire about their plans, so they didn't say. You can have the wedding album and all the photos featuring you. Since I spent considerable time digitizing every photo, I've deleted any I didn't want from my flash drives, which are safely packed. Gesturing towards a stack of flash drives on the end table, I continued, "Those are your copies." Additionally, I've left all the original photos in the attic and online for you to manage as you see fit, including those documenting your encounters with your lovers. I haven't destroyed anything. She wore a bewildered expression, seemingly at a loss for words. Undeterred, I pressed on. "You know, I briefly entertained thoughts of seeking retribution against your lovers, but ultimately decided I have no desire to reside in a prison cell. So please convey to Gareth, Eric, or any other acquaintances of yours, I'm sure I could identify them, that they're dead to me, just like my marriage. If they happen to spot me anywhere, they should promptly walk the other way, as I might be tempted to experiment with prison attire." She nodded, finally finding her voice. "Where are you moving to?" "Let's just say it's somewhere else. I've resigned from my job and accepted a position quite a distance away from here. The kids know where I'm going, but they're under strict instructions never to disclose my new contact information or location to you. I'm sure you'll be able to track me down if you really want to, but frankly, I don't see why you would." And there you have it, folks. It's probably like most endings of marriages: no fireworks, no dramatic explosion, just a sense of sadness that one partner couldn't manage something as simple as fidelity. As for me, personally, I'll be okay. Sure, it stings to know that Joyce had so little regard for me and our marriage that she sought out multiple affairs throughout our time together. Perhaps it's a sign of the times, where promises hold little weight and personal desires trump everything else, regardless of who gets hurt in the process. As I walked out of the house for the last time, I took stock of my life once more. Sure, I'll likely feel lonely for a while. I'll miss the intimacy of a close relationship, being able to share achievements, setbacks, frustrations, victories, and all the other facets of a rich and fulfilling life. But at just under 50, with most of my hair intact and a lack of physical limitations, I have hope that I'll regain my sense of humor and faith in humanity as I recover from this loss. Is there another great love waiting for me in the future? Who knows, but I won't let the absence of it hold me back. The town I'm headed to now is surrounded by opportunities for outdoor activities. Maybe I'll invest in a road bike, like a Harley or a large Honda, and spend my days off touring around. I've never done a poker run, but my friends who ride have spoken highly of the experience. Perhaps I'll focus on improving my fitness and venture into mountain biking in the hills surrounding the valley where the town is nestled. Regardless of where I may roam, there will always be events, museums, parades, circuses, sports teams, and a plethora of other activities to partake in and explore. As for photography, I'm not sure if I'll be inclined to capture many moments on camera. Some memories are best preserved within the recesses of the mind, rather than in physical form. I aim to keep in mind that it's the journey itself, not the destination, that constitutes the true adventure of life. And as for Joyce's fate, frankly, I don't know, and I couldn't care less. Like most unfaithful partners, she'll likely find someone else to deceive. I just hope that whoever she ends up with either embraces her promiscuity or keeps her on a tight leash. I've had many months to come to terms with my anger and disappointment, so the final confrontation was more about asserting to her that I'm no longer oblivious and that I've regained some semblance of self-respect by confronting her and making it clear that her hidden life is no longer a source of fascination in those fleeting moments of quiet contemplation. Thank you for watching this video to the end. If you liked it, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you soon.